So I'd like to introduce Dr. Pantelick. She is a board-certified internal medicine physician. She is a graduate of the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine and completed her residency at St. Peter's Hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey. She's a faculty member of the Department of Internal Medicine at St. Francis Hospital in Trenton, where she teaches residents and medical students. She's a practitioner with an integrative and functional medicine practice called Signature Health Solutions in Dayton, New Jersey. While conventional medicine provides the protocols needed to get patients through their acute healthcare crises, it doesn't help patients unravel the causes of their symptoms, much less reverse their chronic conditions. In an effort to find a new way to help her patients gain control of their health, Dr. Pantelick began training in the functional medicine approach to illness and wellness and has found a new set of tools for addressing the root causes of disease. Her practice is patient-centered and science-based and offers a wide range of testing to help identify nutritional, gastrointestinal, genetic, and physiologic issues that might be contributing to a person's daily symptoms. Dr. Pantelick also volunteers with us with the suppers programs at the Trenton Farmers Market, and we will hopefully again, where she helps educate the market shoppers about the value of a whole foods lifestyle. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Julie Pantelick.
Thank you, Marion. Wow, that's a lot of description. You know, we doctors, we just do a whole lot of studying. It's not doesn't lead for very interesting reading. But thank you. I'm really so happy to be with all of you. I really want to say thank you to Lee Yonish and the whole Suppers team for putting together this really remarkable blog, a series of posts all this month on gut health and what it means and what you can do about it. And I will definitely be touching on pieces of this as we go along, but I really encourage you to go and look at that to get an overview and then just keep going back to it because it's all really right there. So thanks a lot. So today, I want to talk to you about what the gut is all about. The microbiome is this new field of study that is just unleashing this enormous amount of information that really is going to be impacting how medicine is practiced in the future. And right now, we have enough information to know that we can start taking control of what we do and how we eat to influence our health. At some point, this will lead to personalized medicine, but at the moment, we are all about food. So I'm going to talk to you about the microbiome. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what leaky gut is, how it happens, and what we can do about it. And I want to talk to you about food, especially fiber. And unfortunately, for this problem, you really don't want to just take a pill. This is really about a lifestyle change. So why is the gut an important place to start? We know that there are many people that suffer from chronic conditions related to the gut. And these are just some of the facts. And this data is about 10 to 20 years old, depending on the various sources, but chronic constipation affects 63 million people. 20% of our population has weekly symptoms of reflux. Weekly. 64.6 million prescriptions for proton pump inhibitors, which are the things like Nexium and Prilosec. And those actually come with a lot of health risks. They can lead to C. difficile colitis, contribute to osteoporosis, they cause maldigestion, support H. pylori infection, which nobody wants, they can cause pneumonia. So they're really dangerous medications, and many of us end up going to the doctor or in the hospital, and they put you on a medication, which you just keep taking, and at one point, you realize you've been on it for years, and then it's really hard to get off of it. So there's irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel disease. These are just the GI issues. And then we have 6 out of 10 people that have a chronic disease. For being the most, for being the country that spends the most on our medical system, we actually, we have a life expectancy that's dropping for 3 years in a row. So we really have a lot more that we should be doing differently. So what is the gut? So it's a tube. If you look at the esophagus, so you eat, you swallow, it goes through your stomach, into your small intestine, into your large intestine, and around to your large intestine, and out the rectum. So it's a tube. And I'm not going to talk about all of the organs attached to the tube right now. I'm just going to talk about the tube. So the tube is the first line of defense. It's where we keep things out that we don't want in. It's where we keep out the microbes that are going to be pathogenic, that could cause disease, like parasites, viruses, toxins. So it's our first line of defense. It's also where we digest our food, where we absorb, and where we expel what we don't need in the form of feces. So we thought for decades that organs did this all by themselves, but we are actually realizing that the microbiome is at the heart of all of this. So when the microbiome is injured, we have symptoms, and the symptoms that we have can be any number of these digestive symptoms, but they can also be systemic symptoms. So how does that happen? Through a process called leaky gut is the current thinking. It's called gut permeability in more scientific terms, but it basically means that the boundaries between the cells start to separate, and it allows for food molecules to seep through and cause problems. So we'll talk about that. So one of the things that kind of I find most fascinating is that we are these big, strong humans, and we go around thinking about me, myself, and I, when actually we're a we. We have been a we from the very beginning, and we are only discovering just how much of a we are. So we have within us anywhere from 30 to 100 trillion microbes that have actually evolved with us from the very beginning of our inception as human beings, and we depend on them. We depend on them to help us break down our food. In fact, we cannot even break down our fiber without the microbes. They have enzymes that allow us to do this. So the question about why is the microbiome important is one that a lot of scientists are looking at. And it turns out that the microbiome is in charge of just so many aspects that we have never really recognized. They help us synthesize B vitamins, K, and including vitamin K. They help us break down proteins into branched chain amino acids, which are used by muscles in athletic performance and recovery. They help ferment proteins. They help ferment the fiber in our gut, which produces short chain fatty acids, which we need to absorb calcium, magnesium, and zinc. They're critical in so many aspects of our health. And in fact, we used to think that the genome was sort of the be-all and end-all of information as far as the human is concerned. And it turns out that actually the microbiome acts like levers and turning on and turning off certain genes. So we're now discovering that the microbiome can impact our ability to protect ourselves, and basically how our genes manifest is greatly impacted by the microbiome. So what is the importance of the gut wall? So we know the microbiome is a place of absorption and production of many compounds that we need. It works in harmony with the gut wall. I talk about them separately, but they actually work together. The gut wall is critical to maintain a separation from what is outside and prevents it from getting inside. So the immune system, we know 70% of it resides in the gut. So when our gut is unhealthy, our immune system is also going to be deeply impacted. When you think about the gut wall, you need to recognize that it's one cell layer thick. And I mean literally one cell layer thick. So in this drawing, this is these are cells. There's one cell, and then there is the vascular wall, and that is that's pretty much a representation of what we see. And if you think of the shower wall in your bathroom where you have the tiles and there's the grout in between holding those tiles together, so the grout starts to leak, and like in our shower where you might see mold creeping in, similarly food particles can cross and enter our immune system and create problems. We now know that many of the autoimmune diseases are due to basically a breach in this wall. We all have heard of sepsis, so that is a massive leak, and we end up being in a hospital on antibiotics and being cared for by conventional medicine. But when you have micro leaks, you can get chronic smoldering diseases, which we can now see in the form of things like celiac disease, Hashimoto's, type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. These are all immune diseases that have very clearly possible links through the breach in the wall. The science is still being evolved. So what causes this leaky gut? So we know we don't want a leaky gut, but what causes it? So some of the same things that cause a leaky gut also cause a damage to the microbiome. So these are things like dietary toxins. Antibiotics is the #1 source of injury. Refined carbohydrates, excess sugar, highly processed foods, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, steroids, the proton pump inhibitors we talked about, a lot of things that we take in the form of medications or in the form of food additives, preservatives, things like GMOs, things like glyphosate. All of these things can affect our microbiome and lead to intestinal permeability. One of the interesting ones is something called zonulin. Zonulin is it's a signaling molecule which is triggered by wheat consumption. And so a lot of people go off wheat and they're gluten-free. There's a lot of complexity around that subject. You have, on the one hand, people that have celiac disease. That's a really serious disease that you really truly cannot have any wheat. And then there's a whole lot of people that are sort of on the other side where they have intolerances. But in any case, zonulin has been shown to be produced by wheat consumption, and that can contribute to leaky gut. So we know we want a healthy microbiome. We know we don't want a leaky gut. So how do we take care of our gut? And the simplest thing is to look at what we do every day and to try to eliminate the things that we are doing that are contributing to the problem. So we want to eliminate what I call anti-nutrients, which essentially cause the body to expend more energy than it gets from the process of digesting and absorbing those ingredients. Those are the same things. Refined carbohydrates, things without fiber, medications that we don't need. So one thing that I really like to encourage my patients to do is think about alternatives to running to CVS and going down the aisle and trying to find, fill in the blank, an antacid, something for a sore throat, something for a headache. NSAIDs are really very damaging to the microbiome. So what can you do that is not going to require an NSAID? There are alternatives. There are alternatives in the natural world. You can use things like turmeric, which are anti-inflammatory. You can try to do some meditation if you have a headache. I mean, you have to really work at it, but the point is that you want to think about what it is that you can eliminate from your everyday patterns. And then think about what you can add to your diet in terms of whole foods. So I would suggest thinking about rethinking breakfast. And I'll talk about that in a moment. You can add some supplements. You may need some digestive support at the beginning. There isn't really room to talk about that at this point in time, but I'm happy to come back and talk about that further. So this is my massive list. So you want to eliminate what injures the microbiome and interferes with digestion. So we talked briefly about antibiotics. Now, of course, everybody is going to at some point need an antibiotic. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people use antibiotics. Some unnecessarily so. So what I would suggest is if you feel you really need an antibiotic, then you want to support the use of it by consuming probiotics and fermented foods in advance, and then afterwards for about a month after you've used the antibiotics. NSAIDs, try to find some alternatives. PPIs, don't start them if you don't need them, and try to taper them down. And I know that gets difficult. And we went through most of these. I don't want to take up your time, but you can go back and refer to this. But a lot of this chronic stress, the big C, turns out chronic stress is the #1 leading cause of death and disability. If you unravel all of the data, stress is huge. We just really do not know how to manage it. So there's lots of tools for that. Sedentary lifestyle, sitting is the new smoking. Eating on the run, we all do that. And what can you do to change that? Just try to, think about things that you can do to change your patterns. So when we talk about fiber, we talk about prebiotics as being a fiber. So fiber is a prebiotic. It supports our good bacteria, which is the probiotic. And then the fermentation process that happens in the colon, that produces short chain fatty acids, which are these powerful compounds that we need to keep ourselves healthy. So butyrate is one of these short chain fatty acids that's been shown to increase our energy expenditure and decrease our weight. It increases mitochondrial function. It lowers cholesterol. It helps reverse the metabolic syndrome. It's incredibly anti-inflammatory. And so if we have a fiber poor diet, we have a butyrate poor diet. This is a book that just came out this year. It's really quite interesting. A lot of physicians are writing books on a particular microcosm of the field of health. But this actually, this doctor talks about how the importance of fiber is pretty much at the heart of the whole matter. And he gives you a 4-week method of introducing fiber into your diet. So a lot of people think of fiber as a carb, and that we've all been sort of taught that carbs are, we gain weight, we get fatigued, but those that thought about carbs is really looking at refined carbs. And those refined carbs have been stripped of the fiber. And it's really the fiber that is responsible for balancing our blood sugar and triggering the use of our hormones more efficiently. Fiber tells us to stop eating when we're full. So if we're eating things that are not full of fiber, we won't get that signal. And complex carbs basically refer to the whole plant. So the dietary strategy that that I really would like to encourage everyone to consider is how to get fiber into your diet. There are two primary types of fiber. There is soluble and insoluble. Soluble fiber, so all plants have some combination of them. It gets quite confusing. And you don't want to think about fiber like I had 7 grams of fiber today, or I had 38 grams of fiber today. That's a lot of fiber. But you want a diversity of fiber. You want fiber at every meal. And you always want to choose a whole food versus a processed food. So there are starchy or soluble fibers. These include carrots and squash, potatoes and beets. And then there are non-starchy or insoluble fiber. We think of psyllium as an insoluble fiber, but that is our grandmother's fiber. And it is fine, and everyone should take psyllium on a regular basis because it helps us when we're not able to get enough fiber in our system. And then there's some tips for making insoluble fiber more digestible. So for example, you want to try to steam them if you can, or mash or chop them so that you are actually helping break down the fiber for your body. So start by making some food swaps. Consider the fiber content of what you're eating and take small steps. So mix up your usual routine. So this is what I make for breakfast. I call it my overnight oatmeal. You fill a mason jar halfway with whole rolled oats, and then you put in some dried fruit without sugar, some flax seeds. You can open up a capsule of probiotic and fill it with almond milk. It will soak overnight, and in the morning you can cook it up. Think about a different breakfast. So we all think about breakfast as, well, not everybody, but the majority of Americans think of breakfast as my bagel, my muffin, my scone, my pancake, and those are just, I'm sorry to say, that's just perfectly terrible food for you to get through the day. It's refined, there's no fiber, it's full of sugar, it's full of fat, and it's not going to give you the energy you need as if you were to have protein. Things like sorry, brown rice with steamed kale and an egg on top. I mean, now there's a breakfast. That'll get you through lunch. I know it takes a lot to kind of think that way, and a lot of people are like, no, thank you very much. But it's truly something that you want to try to consider. Make your own fermented foods. So beet, can't really say, beet kvass is a fermented liquid, which is basically beets and salt, and it's similar to sauerkraut. It's a wonderful place to start. Have a little bit of some sort of fermented liquid, or kimchi, or kombucha, or any of these fermented foods. A little bit every day would be super. And add into your diet things that will nourish the microbiome at every meal. So you want to think about some sort of fiber, a new fruit or vegetable. That's the other thing, is that we all kind of get into this, like, I'm going to have kale, collards, and Brussels sprouts. Well, what about vegetables that you've never actually even tried before? I mean, that's the thing that is really interesting about this book, Fiber Fueled, is he makes the point that the healthiest people on the planet, this tribe in Africa, they have 102 different types of fiber every week, when the average American might have 5. So we have a long way to go, but you have to start where you can. So I would say try some new fruits and vegetables. And finally, just remember that we are a we, and that we need to take care of ourselves as a we. So it's not just what I want for me, it's what do I want for my gut, because the gut is going to keep us healthy. So diversity of plants, something at every meal. Increase the fiber that you have in your meals slowly. So you don't want to go from no fiber to maximal fiber, because you will have severe gastric distress. Your body really has to adjust, and it just takes steps. So don't make dramatic changes, but just make small incremental changes and have a plan. You can also try supportive enzymes, and share your meals with others. There's some really good data that shows that we share our microbiomes with whoever we live with. And eliminate problem foods like synthetic processed foods. We've gone over that, I think, enough. And don't forget to nourish yourself in terms of sleep, exercise, and joy. So thank you very much.
Thank you again, and we will hopefully see everybody soon. Even though we are, distanced, doesn't mean that we can't make these connections. So,
Great. Well, thank you, everybody.